Welcome, welcome, welcome to the ZBH Dojo. Enjoying a little cup of Joe right here. Delicious every damn time. All right, so before we get started, we must bow to our masters and lords of CG and art, starting with Frank Frazetta. Did you bow? Let's try it again. Frank Frazetta. Thank you, Father. St. Joseph. St. Paul. St. Ryan, of course. And the Archangel of CG, Raphael. We thank you all for your continued inspiration, education, and just overall badassery. So today we are going to be going over female torso anatomy. We're going to be using the skeleton to get us there. I'm going to show you how I use that in pretty much all of my projects so that I can get my anatomy down and not really worry about proportions or if this arm's longer than that one. Like, everything's ready to go. So what we're going to be focusing on today is the shoulders, the pectoralis, the trapezius, the lats, the teres major, the lumbars, and serratus, obliques, and abdominis rectus. So, pretty much upper torso and our deltoids. And so, yeah, if you have any questions, if you want to comment on anything positive, feel free to put it in the chat. Watching them from pretty much all of our streaming platforms. So if you're on Facebook, please go to Twitch. We're on DLive. We're on YouTube. We're all over the place. All right? Making an impact. You better be too. So let's head over to the dojo. I know, it was real quick, right? I didn't even have to get up. You see, that's what the ZBH Dojo gives you. Super speed. Alrighty. So this is I'm teaching students who basically have had no experience, most of them no experience in art, period, and definitely zero experience in Zbrush and Maya, and zero experience on putting a piece together. They've gotten pretty far. Again, there's some issues that we're going to fix, but we're not going to worry about that today because in class we actually haven't lectured over it. So there will be some things that you're going to see that you probably are going to be driving you crazy, but again, we're only worried about the deltoids and the upper torso. That's all we're worried about, okay? So here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double check the skeleton and make sure nothing's dislocated. Make sure nothing's going through one another. Okay. And kind of want to rotate this back a bit more so that we can get those hips in place. So I'm going to grab these. I'm going to just grab a bit of what I want, then press Control-Shift-A, and then that'll just bring everything here. Going to invert it, Control-Shift, clicking, inverting those, and then polygrouping these all as one, because if this moves, then all of this is going to move, and there's really not a lot of rotation specifically in the hip. There's a little butt wink that we can do and stuff like that, but it's kind of limited, and really all we need to do is put it into place, and then our basic knowledge of the spine and all that stuff, we can finish it. Okay, so we're going to reverse that, and we're going to grab the rest of this, hide it, mask, bring everything back, and then we're going to bring this in here. The rib cage, I would kind of like to have it rotated a bit more, but I think what we'll do is we'll just get the anatomy right, And then afterwards, we'll artify it up and make sure it looks good. So I'm going to press Control and Shift and click right there. Going to solo this out, and I kind of want my articulation right around here. Right, I'm not going to rotate every vertebra manually. That's just something personally I don't need to see. I just need to know that the hips are in the right place. Alrighty. So kind of orienting that, bringing everything back and turning off solo. And now that we have our axis ready, we can bring this down. Okay. And let's rotate it a little bit more. Something like that. And then let us get this again. Let's auto group this. Let's just grab, well, let's bring everything back. Grab these, boom, boom, invert it, polygroup it, boom, 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 polygroup it. And I'm going to want the point of articulation right here at the sacrum. So I'm going to solo this out. I'm going to hold Alt, and I'm just going to click right here. I'm going to make sure it's roughly aligned. And then I'm going to bring everything back. Clear our mask. Grab Control Shift and just grabbing a bit of what we need from each polygroup, and Control Shift A. Masking it, inverting the mask, and then bringing everything back. And we're just going to slowly give this a little wink. Oops. Let's grab that as well. We're going to manually unmask that and rotate it in just a snitch. Okay, so now we got the skeleton roughly in place. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to roughly start blocking things in and putting them where they need to be, right? So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to turn off transparency, and I kind of want to put this shoulder into place. So we're going to go here. I'm also going to auto group this by UVs. Let's see. There's something here that is preventing us. Looks like the UVs were deleted or removed for some reason. That's weird. That shouldn't have happened. Oh well. So we're just going to use a move brush and start putting this into place, right? So we can put this shoulder over here. We can start blocking in the torso and the clavicles, all that good stuff, putting this neck into place, right? Because the rig I gave them in class is not really meant for keeping the deformations all the same or any of that stuff. What we're doing is just getting the pose and the gesture right, and then we're sculpting the anatomy. And for me, I enjoy sculpting anatomy, so it's all good for me. All right, so just hitting this clavicle right here, and moving this around. We're going to turn transparency on, and we'll be going over all these muscle groups pretty soon. Alrighty, so putting the lat into place. The lat is attaching up into the armpit. Going to kind of put this around the rib cage due to the fact there's not, especially on this type of body style, there's not going to be a lot of skin on the back before we get to the spine, right? So we just want to put everything into place. And I like using the skeleton because that way, if you know your anatomy, you know where all your origination and insertion points are. And it may look a bit stiff while you're sculpting this, but after you've got all the anatomy set and everything's looking proportional and everything's looking good, I find it a whole lot easier to artify it up and make it look, sexy or sleek or whatever it needs to be. And all my proportions are set, so it's a whole lot easier for me. Right, and on this, let's get this rib cage going. I'm gonna kind of smooth that, make sure we have the chromium process right next to the skin. Right here, I'm gonna kind of move this mesh around. Kind of get it evened out, and we definitely don't want our mesh going through the rib cage. We're going to be putting all this back into place, and I kind of want to get this polygrouped because I want to focus on certain areas. So I'm just holding well, I'm not holding, I'm press W, holding control and dragging down the geometry, and then inverting it and pressing Control W, and then it's giving me these. So normally I would have these arms, if it was in a T-pose, symmetrically polygrouped, but since this is a obviously not symmetrical, I want to have each arm its own thing. And I'm not worried about the polygroups being perfect on the specific poly loop. I'm just worried about getting it evenly and that's not slanted, right? Like we don't have this mass going diagonally across the entire torso. So we are going to grab those, that, invert them, and we're going to unmask it manually, bring it back, and Control W. And now we've got that. So we missed a part on those, but that's fine because you can just Control Shift click it, Control Shift X, and it'll grow it by 1, and then you can Control W that, and now we have that going. And you can see this is what I was talking about with the mask not being even, but that's fine. So what we can do is go here, and we can just Control Shift and then Alt, get rid of all that. Bring this back. Control Shift click in between those. Oops. We're going to go a little bit more. Control Shift and then hold Alt. And yeah, because generally this oh, am I still there? Come on, Zbrush. Come on now. It ain't that difficult. I don't know, for some reason, is anybody else having this issue whenever, like a computer just freezes while I'm using Zbrush and streaming? I don't know what it is. And I have a pretty recent computer, so I'm not sure what is going on. All right, so we're going to mask this, invert it, Control W. We're going to click and, oops. Let's, and then we can auto group it, J, auto group. These aren't connected. Of course they're connected somewhere. Jesus. Okay, J auto group. Alrighty. Grab those. Grab this. F is unusual position. Alrighty. So now we've got the got this polygroup. So now we're going to put all this weirdness back into shape. Okay, so with this type of body style, the breasts are pretty much going to be where the pecs are, which is going to be around the fifth rib. We're going to make sure that our costal cartilage is at an angle of 60 instead of 90 for a male. And we're going to start moving all this into place. So she does have like a loincloth shirt, so I'm not super concerned with sculpting the breasts realistically. I kind of just want to block them in. All right, and with her body style, skin's going to be, or the overall shape is going to reveal the rib cage, definitely. So we want to make sure that's blocked in before we start sculpting anything else in, because we got to take this by steps. We can't be going directly into detail or directly into muscles when we don't even have the torso set, right? And if you're just starting out and you're not really familiar with the rib cage, this is definitely a good way to, there we go. This is definitely a good way to get accustomed to it and kind of keep practicing over and over again, setting a rib cage until it becomes second nature to you. There we go. We're going to put this into place, make sure that our hips are set as well. Just put that right there. Smooth, smooth, smooth. And again, making sure this is pretty close to the spine. Okay, and you know, we're getting a lot of this for free in terms of where things belong, where the proportion should be, and I think it makes for a pretty effective workflow. So you can get past the you know, the anatomy proportion stage and really get into putting your signature on these type of things. And after a while, it just becomes second nature. And we're going to add a little bit more oblique because it's definitely going to connect here to the anterior superior iliac spine. So I don't want to just have, you know, vacancy there or some type of, let's see what we can get. Let's smooth that out. Let's smooth that out. Okay. So we're going to make sure this is at, make sure our hips are set as well, just as important as our rib cage. Making sure we have forms that are illustrating that the obliques are coming from 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So those are easy to spot, 12, 11, 10, 9, right? Your last two are floating, so there's only 12 ribs, so it's pretty easy. Pretty easy. It's a good visual landmark. Okay, I'm going to smooth this out. Going to sketch in this rectus abdominis. I'm going to bring all this back. And just make sure we don't have something too weird happening with the leg to where it's throwing off pretty much everything else for our hip. Alrighty. Da, 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 da. Smooth, smooth. Smooth. That's going through the sacrum. We definitely don't want that happening. We don't want this going beyond our sitting bones in terms of the pelvic floor. We can start smoothing that out and start moving that a bit closer to where the great trochanter would be, which would be a little bit further back, somewhere around there. Alrighty, let's see. And let's start on these arms and start blocking them out. So I'm going to grow this out a bit more so we can get something over the shoulder. And let's begin. So first, I'm just going to smooth things out so it's a little bit more in line with the concept art, and just making sure that we hit our bony landmarks. And making sure, you know, it's not too far off. Alrighty, so we're gonna have our shoulder is going to be attached from the rear scapula all the way back here, right on this corner, and it's going to come around. Okay, and it's going to go halfway down the humerus, and it's just going to attach right there. Okay. Next is, well, we haven't lectured on the arm, so not going to specifically. We'll go over that later, chat, for sure. We'll go over that this next weekend. All right, so I'm just going to move everything over using a move topological, so it's grabbing one mesh and not allowing me to grab all of it at the same time. All right, and making sure that's there, and just hinting at the fact that the deltoid is coming from behind right here, right in this corner, and coming around and ending halfway down the humerus. Right. And just for your own edification, if you're going to be using this, using move topological, make sure your olecranon or your elbow is right next to the skin, right? Because you can feel your elbow right there. So if you're using the skeleton method, we definitely want to make sure that's consistent, right? So anywhere there's a bony landmark, we should ensure that our mesh is very close to that. This scapula is a little weird. It's popped out a little bit too much, I think. Could rotate it down, but we'll sculpt it anyway. Alrighty, there we go. So I'm going to go up in subdivision level. I'm going to make sure everything's shown, make sure everything's unmasked, and going to press Control D. So now what I'm going to do is you can get your, whatchamacallit. Let's get this. You can use FormSoft or Standard Brush. For me, I use FormSoft. It's a whole lot easier for me. But what we're going to do now is we're going to sculpt in our 3 heads of the pectoralis, which is our clavicular, which is going over our shoulder and attaching on the outside of our humerus. All right, so I want to sculpt smooth until that mesh is doing what I want it to do, and then kind of just guiding it in there slowly but surely. All right, and making sure this goes over the shoulder and attaching on the outside. We're going to make sure this clavicle is pretty set. So for this, I'm going to use a standard brush because I want a little bit more, I want to be a little bit more aggressive with it. So going to put in this fascia around the clavicle and trapezius. We're going to make sure here in our S curve that that's where our anterior head of our deltoid is coming in. And then we're making sure that our pectoralis is going over our shoulder. Okay. Here. And then we're going to put in the pit of the neck right here as a bony landmark. We're going to make sure all this is to the bone. We don't want this very far off because you can feel it right here. It's pretty much skin and bone, right? And we haven't lectured on it in class yet, but this sternocleidomastoid, just because it's pretty easy to mark in, comes from the mastoid process right here, and attaches to your sternum. So if you want to sculpt that in, feel free. And then we're going to make sure that this is to the bone as well, our mesh. And sculpting, smoothing, head of the clavicle. And just making sure this is evenly distributed on the sternum. We don't want a wavy pattern whenever we look at our sternum. It should be pretty solid. Alrighty, we're gonna move, you see how low this is? We're going to move this up so it's a little bit more believable of an armpit. Make sure it's kind of up there, but also keep in mind that your pectoralis is going over all this. All right. And then we're going to have the sternal head. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. And we're going to go over and we're going to sculpt in the pecs before we put in the breasts, because the breasts are laying on top of the pectoralis. So we got to make sure that's set in practice before we start sculpting in breasts of any sort. Again, always having the rib cage locked in as close as we can before we start moving on. Okay. So sternal head right here, going down to the 5th. Right here, I was actually sculpting in the thoracic head. All right, so going over sternal, pretty much coming from your clavicular head, going down to the 5th, and then going over your shoulder and attaching to the outside. And okay, so now we're going to talk about the teres major. It's this hero muscle on your at the end of your scapula, and it's attaching right here under your armpit. So we kind of just need to hint at that for right now, just due to the low resolution that we have. And again, we're going in steps. You know, we're not going straight to the high poly definition. We're going in stages. I've seen very few people go straight to high poly with success. There are a few, but in general practice, the best thing to do is to go in steps. All right. Coming down, we have our lateral head, which is going to be pretty much as a chromium process. And then we're going to have this shoulder, this rear delt, coming from the end of the spine of the scapula, making sure most of the meat is after that, because we have a tendon or an aponeurosis that connects the rest. So most of the muscles before we actually get to the spine of the scapula. All right. Again, reinforcing this clavicular head, the of the pectoralis, bringing this over, possibly going to, possibly going to move this up as well. We'll see. We'll see if that was good or bad. Okay, and bring this up a little bit more. All right, so let's get to this side. Right here, again, coming from the end of our spine of the scapula and coming forward down halfway for the humerus, and then make sure we have our lateral head that's connected to our chromium process. Making sure we don't puff that out too much, because it is a bony landmark, right? It's skin, bone, skin, bone. So there shouldn't be any muscle going over that. Right? And then we have right here where this S begins, or this curve right here, bink. That's where our anterior head, or the front deltoid, is going to be. Okay. All right. And again, just putting in the the heads of the pectoralis, coming from the clavicular, going down and attaching to the outside of the humerus, right? There's lots and lots and lots of sculptors out there ending the pec just around here and then just having striations going all over the place, right? We review you in class and we show you as how not to sculpt the pectoralis. So make sure you understand how the pectoralis works. All right. So then we have our sternal head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, coming down to the 5th. And let's make sure that our rib is set, rib cage, because I don't want to deform it too much. Let's just send it to the rib cage. Smooth it out, boom, 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 boom. Get a little bit more even distribution. And don't worry about re-sculpting things. That's just, for me, that's just part of the process. Like what I'm doing right now, just pushing everything to the rib cage and then kind of re-sculpting a lot of stuff. But, you know, it's just get used to it. You're going to have clients asking you to redo things, and if you got a bad attitude about it, not good. All right. Okay, so we pretty much have everything set. Let's make sure all this is to the bone as well. Smoothing it out to get a better distribution of polys, and just making sure that's not too far off the rib cage, because this body type, you're going to be able to see the rib cage a lot of the time. All right, so now we have everything, well, except for the sternal head. Let's move this down to the rib cage. Smooth, smooth, smooth. Smooth, smooth, smooth. Build it up. Okay, so we got our clavicular head in here, going over our shoulder and attaching to the outside of our humerus. We've got our sternal head coming from the end of the clavicular head right around here, and then going down to our 5th. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. So we just mark that in, kind of leaving the sternum alone. We don't want too much muscle going over it, especially for this body type. So again, just making sure that we haven't lost that bony landmark, smoothing it, gently sculpting it over. Okay, smoothing it out, gently sculpting it over. There we go. All right, so sternal head, again, coming from the outside of the humerus and attaching right here. So please make sure you're sculpting your pectoralis correctly from now on, or you will be in my class for sure. Okay. And then there's a thoracic head. Let's get this. Again, 1, 2, oops, sorry. There's one right here. You can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 right here. Thoracic head. Again, going up and over your shoulder. Up and over your shoulder. Regardless if that makes sense to you or not, trust me, that's what's happening with your pecs. So make sure that you're sculpting accordingly. Please, for the love of God, understand the pectoralis. Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Smooth, smooth, smooth. Alrighty. So we're getting things blocked in. We've got that rib cage with that nice hit right here. We're going to start sculpting in this back anatomy now. I'm going to turn on transparency. First thing I like to knock in is the spearhead of aponeurosis, which goes around the 7th vertebra. So right around here. And you can tell where the 7th vertebra is because it's one right before this first thoracic vertebra. So you have cervical, which is your neck, thoracic, which is every vertebra attached to a rib, and then lumbar. after that, and then your sacrum, which is the fusing of your entire spine into your tailbone, right? So we want to make sure that we have somewhat of a spearhead of aponeurosis. If you look it up online, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about, the tendinous sheet that surrounds your seventh vertebra. And just kind of moving this into place real quick. So, alrighty, moving the neck into place. Smooth, smooth, smooth. Okay. So, spearhead right there. Coming up. And our trapezius comes from the base of our skull. We're going to knock in this sternocleidomastoid. Okay, so your clavicles or your scapula are super, super important, right? It connects your trapezius here, coming down and up to the base of the skull, right? It attaches your your serratus muscles right here. On the front, your biceps connect to it. Your so many things are associated with and or affected by your scapula. So it's pretty important to kind of dive into how complex and how connective it is, and how it influences the rest of your body. And it's just these little shoulder blades, right? And then just putting in the spine of the scapula, because with this body type, if it was super bulky, we would have the trapezius coming out and then going into our scapula, right? But with a thin or gaunt person, it's going to come up and it's going to level up to the scapula as opposed to feeding into it. So that's what I'm trying to do here, making sure that this is a ledge that the trapezius feeds into. Okay, something like that. Kind of overemphasizing it right now just because I'm getting started, but as we sculpt on this more and more, it'll look better and better. Okay, again, making sure our chromium process is landmarked. Okay, and we are going to mark in our trapezius. So your trapezius, again, coming from the base of your skull, attaching to the spine of your scapula, going over the very corner of it, and then coming down to your last thoracic vertebra, right? So this is where it's ending. And coming up and over, right? We're going to have our lumbars here, coming from our sacrum, going all the way up to our seventh vertebra, but most of the meat's going to be here at the bottom, but that's going to be on each side. And then we'll have that little, those little dimples on each. And we're going to block in this side. Oops. Block in this side of the rib cage a bit more. It's kind of losing its appeal here. So blocking that in, bringing it over, and then having it come down to our iliac crest. So I always suggest everybody learn your anatomy. It's kind of like being a musician and not speaking music theory, especially if you want to be. I mean, of course, you can always have a super cool style without knowing anatomy. Of course, is it going to take you longer or shorter? Who knows? Maybe you're just naturally inclined to having a super badass style without any knowledge. But that's going to be very, very rare. How many Jimi Hendrixes do we know, right? Not many. So maybe you are blessed with the universe picking you out as one of those individuals, but I would bet more often than not that we kind of need these foundational, we need this foundational knowledge so that we can grow quicker and more effective And instead of sculpting with by making sculpting mistakes from the very beginning, we can kind of sculpt with some really good knowledge and get our foundation set with a few less mistakes than we would without that knowledge. And it's a lot of information in the beginning, 100%. Like, it's when I tried to learn anatomy for the first time, they were like, yeah, the acromion process and this and that, and it's a lot. It's a lot of information. But, if you just let it sink in and kind of don't defeat yourself with saying, oh, it's too complicated, I can't learn it. It's just watch it again, again, because it's only going to make you money, and it's only going to open up doors of opportunity for you. Okay, so balance of this character is a little off as well, but that's fine. That's fine. We're just sculpting the anatomy. Oops. Okay, so let's turn off transparency. Let's kind of fill these things in with our eye now so that we can make sure it looks good. Got that xiphoid process kind of hitting the rib cage a bit. What's up, Hannibal? And kind of making sure this torso is really, really nice. What am I doing? I am going over torso anatomy for my university students, because it's a lot of information, and in class you can really only get to the lecture, and then if something's super complicated, I like providing a video for them and giving them every opportunity to learn and to make an A. What are you doing? All right, I'm going to subdivide one more time, and we're going to go to the next level. Okay, so we got the spine of the scapula. We're going to reinforce this again. The rear deltoid attaches at the very end of the spine of the scapula and attaches halfway down the humerus. And let's knock in this clavicle. It's a little puffy right here. So I'm going to dig in, going to kind of mark it, going to make sure we have our trapezius and our sternocleido kind of sketched in. There is another tail from the sternocleido that comes out, but for right now I'm just focusing on the fascia in between so I can get my landmarks roughed in. Okay, so let's turn off transparency. And just even a little hint at that clavicle is reassuring. Boom, boom, boom. Right there. And the upper torso is going to be covered with clothing, so not really concerned with this. Just want to make sure the block out is there. Smooth, smooth, smooth. Again, just reinforcing these heads of the deltoid. Okay, so we can really mark it in now. What I'm going to do, again, we have three major heads, right? We have the anterior, lateral, and then the posterior. But when it comes to the acromion process head or the lateral head, there's actually three heads to that as well. And I forgot what it's called, penultimate, or excuse me. It just means a lot of tendons, right? So in here, you're going to see the most striations in the shoulder than you would on the posterior or anterior head, or the rear or the front. But this character is not super buff or anything, so we're not going to start putting in striations on the shoulder. It's kind of she's not that type of a warrior, like the tank. She's more like rogue or something like that. All right, again, just putting in this lateral head that is attached to the chromium process. And then the anterior head is going up into this little S-curve that right here. Right, and bringing that down halfway to the humerus. All deltoids and halfway down the humerus. Coming here, right there, and then I think what I'm going to do is add a bit more teres major in here. Going up into there. Let's see. I think that's fine. Would like it a little bit lower, somewhere around here. Coming around. Okay. Alrighty. So we pretty much got it blocked out. Let's work on this lat a bit more. It's a little bit too puffy for me, especially for this body type. We should see the ribs coming into play, especially if they're bent over like this and stretching themselves out. You'll definitely see the curvature of the rib cage influencing the overall back, and especially with this body type, you'll actually see the impression of the rib cage or the ribs poking through. Right, and again with this body type, making sure things are pretty close to the bone. All right, so your lat is originating from your armpit, coming down and attaching to your anterior iliac spine, so right around here. And using the standard brush, bringing this down and attaching it right there. And then your obliques should be poking through from there. There's this little fascia right here. Okay, and then bringing this around, coming over. And we can talk about the gluteus medius maximus on another day. Let's just block in this torso. Okay, it's coming from the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th ribs. 12, 10, or 12, 11, 10, 9. I can't even count. All right, and it's attaching to the superior, anterior superior iliac spine. Right, so we got to make sure that's there, and it's going over the spine just a little bit, just on the iliac crest. And maybe a little puffy, but that's fine. We can move it back into place. Okay. And here, just making sure it's not too puffy, because she is a warrior, so a lot of movement, a lot of tone, but not super muscular. Okay. Again, we can take a look at this rib cage. We can see that we can kind of possibly, I don't know why my computer does this. This is really concerning. I'll get fixed. But we're just going to make sure this is following the rib cage, right? She's not going to have these super thick lats or anything like that. That's going to alter the rib cage too much. Okay, and using my standard brush, kind of hinting at some of these ribs. Alrighty, something like that. And making sure we have our band for the lat that dissipates as soon as the obliques come in. So around the ninth rib is where this band is going to start dissipating, depending on how tone you are, the longer it'll go down, or the longer that band will be visible, but definitely very close to the iliac crest. It's gone, gone, gone. Alrighty. That's fine. So you see how we have this? We were missing that over here. It's kind of just swooping in. So we need to fix that. Right. 12, 11, 10, 9 coming from here and going around to the front. I'm going to use my clay buildup. It's a little bit more, it's got a better sketchy feel for me. So I'm going to do that, making sure I'm following the iliac crest, right? I'm not, depending on the body type, it may be further off, but with this one, it's pretty close. So I don't want to get too far away from the iliac crest. And this is going to be a female, if you didn't read the title. So the things that are going to separate female from a male body traditionally would be wider hips than the rib cage for a female, and the thoracic arch right here, or the costal arch. This is going to be 60 degrees as opposed to 90 degrees, a little bit wider for a male. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to kind of bring that over, and I want a little bit of, I'm going to go down, grab this again. I'm going to grow this out because I kind of want a bit more, see how flat that is? I kind of want to bring a little bit more believability in here for that. I think what I'll do is I'll bring this, grab these guys, smooth them out, and definitely slim them up and kind of relax them. It's just a bit too much, and then we've got this. Well, we'll be sculpting the leg independently, and we'll fix all this. So don't be too concerned. Again, if you're just joining the stream, we're just focusing on the torso, the upper torso, and the deltoids for right now. I don't want to spend 8 hours sculpting one thing. My attention span doesn't really last that long, so I got to switch it up. So we're just taking this female anatomy section by section. All right, so that's a little bit more believable for body type, and it's also giving us a whole lot more room. Alrighty, and again, we'll worry about the legs on a different stream. Just make sure nothing's going through the body. Smooth that out. Make sure that's there. And this is good. This little curve right here is going to be all the way up here. It's not going to be back. Right? Because your skin is, you know, just imagine it being like a leather coat or something. It's just going over all the anatomy. And smooth, smooth, smooth. Moving this over, kind of bringing it to center line. Because in the concept art, the mid-torso is visible. So we want to make sure that's definitely solid. Bring it down. Okay. Is anybody learning anything on the stream? Gage, what's up? Is anybody learning anything out there? Huh? You better be. You better be learning something. All right, so I don't want to get too OCD on the legs. So let's grab this, and let's bring this out a bit more so we can get that rectus abdominis. Let's go down. Kind of want to get that whole area. All right, going to put this to middle right here. This is going to be your pelvic floor. Just kind of want to make sure that's overall even. Again, we'll worry about the gluteus maximus on another day. Alrighty. And okay, Raj just stalking in the background. Oh my God. Gotta get you involved. Gotta get you involved, man. This channel ain't gonna grow unless y'all say something. You know what I'm saying? I know I'm not a hot chick, but goddamn, do I bring millions of dollars of knowledge. All right, so say something. For God's sake, say something. All right, rectus abdominis. All right, coming down here. And bring this iliac crest forward. Right there. Boom. See how much more natural that looks, right? It was straight going back, but now, boom. Have that. Bringing it over. Making sure it's wrapping around the iliac crest. We don't want to have any rogueness, any rogues. Creating your own female character from this past week. Dope. Dope. I like hard workers. I like them, Raj. All right? Don't ever change. Don't go changing. We're just going to even out this geometry a bit more. Ready? We're going to find this middle line. Where is it? Coming down here. We're just going to reinforce that middle line. Alrighty, so what I'm going to do now is kind of trace out the iliac crest. Make sure that's not too wobbly. Let's see. No me gusto. Alrighty, and just making sure nothing's going through the mesh. And making sure we have that sacrum. And generally on a body type like this, it's going to be pretty damn close to the bone. I mean, you're definitely going to feel these little butterflies is what they're called. Hey, this is where all the happening news is. This is where the Epstein didn't kill himself originated. No, I'm just joking. Smooth. Oh, and we're starting this today just because I promised my students I would have this. But after this, we're going into Batman 66 versus Joker 1966. So Adam West versus, was it Cesar Romero? And it's a pretty cool scene. It's going to be for a client. So you'll see me a little bit further along using this method. And it'll be for like male anatomy. So that's going to be coming up tonight as well. And then hopefully we can get into, if we get enough work done, hopefully we can get some modern warfare in. But I'm not going to promise that. Okay. All right. Hell yeah. Bringing all the anatomy knowledge to you. Making sure you are set up for success. And then that way, I've got to be way better, or else I'm just going to starve. All right. So even just so that hint of the rib cage, really bringing in a lot of believability for me, at least. Okay, let's fill this in with the serratus, because your serratus is attached to the inside. Like, so here's the posterior side of your scapula, the part you can feel and see. And then there's the interior, right? Or the anterior side because it's facing the front. All along the medial border of that scapula is going to wrap around your ribs, and it's going to be those little fingers, the serratus anterior. So that's all attached right here. and it pretty much goes up to the nipple. So if this was a male, our nipple would be like right there, and it's pretty much creating this form that you see a lot of the time. And then your lat's just going to come over and across. Depending on the position of your arm, the teres major will be popping out of the lat, and depending on if your arm's down, it'll be like tucked underneath. All right. Boom, boom, boom. Lat's coming up and over. And let's get this trapezius a little bit more. It's a little bumpy and weird. So going to add that, have it come over a bit more. And it's coming from your chromium process and going over this little corner right here at the end of the spine of the scapula and ending on the what? Where's your lat end? Chat? You better be fucking listening, I swear to God. Where does the lat end? Where is it in? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. I dare you. Where does the trapezius end? 3, 2, 1, 0. You all missed out on a free sub over at Twitch, man. Y'all got to pay attention if y'all want to get some shit. All right? So, trapezius originates from the base of the skull, attaches to the acromion process along the spine of the scapula, going over the spine of the scapula, and ending at the last thoracic vertebra. The vertebra. Okay? The last one right here, this last floating rib. Boop. Right there. That's where it's ending. Okay? You better start fucking paying attention. Get me pissed. Alrighty. So again, medial border, right? Medial border all along the anterior side. So it would be kind of all along here. Wrapping around and would be going towards the nipple, which would be the 5th rib. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right around there. Coming around and attaching, and that's your trajectory. Okay. And just going to reinforce this sternal head. Right there, because her arm is out. So we're going to have to make sure this pectoralis is kind of coming over, because, you know, you're stretching your pectoralis forward. So we're going to have a little overlap right here. All right. So clavicular head is from the S, right? Right here, right there. You're going to have a little fascia right there. Okay. Little pectoralis right there attaching to the outside of your humerus right here. And I mean, if you just stretch your arm out, you're going to feel your sternum, your sternal head coming up and over, and it's going to create this concavity right here, right? So that's kind of what we want to hint at. We want this coming forward. And your sternal head is going to be connected to the same place, right? So we're going to come from the end of the sternal head, which is beginning here, ending on the 5th rib. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right here. And then doing the same thing that the clavicular head is, and it's going over the shoulder. So you might need to sculpt, smooth, so that this mesh does what you want it to do. So you might have to sculpt it over and over again, but that's good practice for you and me and all the fish of the sea. Okay. And we can just overemphasize this coming all the way halfway down the humerus, right? So let's bring it. Come on. There you go. Nice, man. Looking great. I wish I did more sculpting and not hard surface. What size monitor do you use? I'm wanting to swap my 2x24 inch. Oh, yeah. So I have a 21x9. It's a ultra wide. And let me finish this attachment point real quick. Do right around there. Okay. So, yeah, I go 21x9 on my monitors. I like them ultra wide. That way I've got a whole lot more sculpting or painting space and can fit multiple, like right now I have multiple programs or 2 programs side by side on the same monitor. And it seems like the old style, you know, the 4x4 one. And yeah, it's just a lot of space, and the more space, the better for us, I think, when it comes to monitor. And then it's pretty dope on the gaming too. Especially when you get that wide aspect, you know, wide field of view, you know, a little 16x9 people go like 90. We go 110. Making sure our ADS is all set up. No one's going to be sneaking up on you on a 21x9. I want to get those I just want one big monitor curved from one end to the other. Just, oh, that'd be so sexy. So sexy. Okay. So let's bring this. Let's see how we're doing. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so let's take a look at this torso. Okay. And so, you know, I'm not a slave to the skeleton or relying on the skeleton so much that I'm not coming in here and refining things. So make sure, even though you're using a very powerful tool, that you just don't leave it up to that. Make sure you have, make sure you go in there and put your signature on it. Right, and just making sure that iliac crest isn't poking out too much. We definitely want it here on the posterior side. But on the lateral side, we kind of generally want that covered up by the oblique. And I'm going to just double check this torso. It's a little bumpy. And make sure, yeah, it was a little bumpy. Just fix that, smooth it out. Does anybody have Modern Warfare? Anybody get the new Modern Warfare? Because I'm looking for a crew, dude. We have 3. We're looking for a 4th. So if you're out there and you get your shit done and then you play Modern Warfare, then fucking hit me up. All right? But only if you get your shit done. But yeah, if you're on that battle net, hit me up, brothers and sisters. Alrighty. And sisters and brothers. Just making sure we're reinforcing that rib cage. You know, for athletic female, it's pretty important that you nail in these apexes of these curves. And usually on the front of the oblique, there's a flat plane. So right now what I'm doing is I'm using the trim dynamic to kind of get that plane. And again, over here, holding Alt, having it build up right there. And make sure it's still got, you know, it's still got a feeling that it's wrapping around the iliac crest or your hip bone. And I kind of want a bit. You see how concave that is? Kind of want a bit of fat in here, especially whenever they're in this position. You're definitely going to have a wrinkling of the stomach regardless of how fit you are. And so want to kind of sculpt this rectus abdominis all the way to the pubic bone, or the pubic synthesis, which is going to be down here at the end. So we're going to make sure that we have enough space and that's consistent. Hello, what do you think about VR sculpting and future of VR? From Brian Stoke. First off, thank you for being here, Brian. I appreciate you. Second, I don't know. I've never tried VR sculpting. It looks highly intriguing. I'm kind of waiting, honestly, for Zbrush to put that together for us. I don't know if that's a market they want to get into, just because, you know, VR is not as accessible or affordable as a Wacom bamboo tablet, you know. So I think it's kind of like a super fancy feature that isn't totally necessary right now for ZBrush to be successful. But I would love to sculpt VR in ZBrush. I think that would be totally dope. But I've seen this one artist. She paints these huge paintings all in VR, and they just look so beautiful. It looks like a lot of fun. I don't know how my claustrophobia would feel about having that mask on my face for like 12 hours. But I am super, super excited for AR sculpting, because that way I can kind of see my environment and sculpt within it at the same time. You know what I mean? Richard Gilbert Buchanan. What's that sticking out of his ass? This is the rest of the skeleton that we haven't gotten to. For this stream, what we're doing is we're focusing on the deltoids and the upper torso, because I haven't lectured to my students about much else concerning the human anatomy, and I want to do that before we actually sculpt it on stream. So hopefully we'll be on stream and we'll be sculpting this female character from beginning to end using the skeleton method. But yeah, thanks for being here, Richard. Thanks for being here, Shoham. Appreciate you. Okay, so right here, sternal, going over, making sure we have this. And you can see, you know, we weren't done whenever we first blocked this out. You know, you gotta come back. You gotta go over it again and again and again. It's always telling people they're getting into this. It's rarely ever a one-button solution when it comes to this. So make sure you're ready to put in some work, resculpt, all that good stuff. Right? And just gonna make sure this clavicular head is in the right spot. You see how much space we had for that clavicular head? We had a lot in there. So that was, you know, these are bony landmarks. There's plenty of images on YouTube where you can, you know, you just type in bony landmarks of the human body and they'll give them all to you. So make sure you're very aware of those, because whenever they're not shown or they're in the wrong spot or they're going the wrong direction, it's very noticeable. Alrighty, and just making sure that our skin is right next to our sternal, or the head of our sternum right here. Right, there's not going to be much there. You're going to have a platysma, and some veins and stuff like that, some nerves, but like that's about it. or in that it's pretty much going to be skin and bone. Right, coming from the mastoid process, I'm actually going to relocate this ear. It's a little far back. Actually, where is it? Yeah, it should be right there. Okay. Brian Stoke about modern warfare. I'm from Russia, and in my country, state-owned media launch a company against this game because of Russophobia. Yeah, I fucking love. I love all Russian women. That's my weakness. So Russia's always with love for me, but yeah, that was kind of weird. Whenever we were playing it, we're like, oh man, the Russians can't be too happy about this one. But it is also fiction, and you got to have a villain of some sort. Unfortunately, America and Russia, we're just in a abusive relationship in which we love each other and hate each other at the same time. It's love, baby. It's love. It's love. All right. Here. Okay, and I'm going to put this armpit a little bit more. I'm going to move it a little bit more medially. Inferior to superior. And I'm going to bring this out. Make sure this looks sexy, right? We don't want some crony looking thing here. Just make sure it looks sexy. But yeah, did they ban that game, Brian? I heard that they banned it. Like you can't get it in Russia or something like that. But when a game is banned in a country, it's good. It's real good. All right, just a little extra knowledge here. We haven't lectured over it, but if you want to get started on it, make sure that the skin, right, you can feel your ulna coming from your elbow halfway, and then muscle, your flexors and extensors are going to kind of overshadow it. But then from here, halfway, I'm going to say about top third, the ulna is going to start showing again. So around those bony landmarks, you want a little bit more hard surface than you would organic feeling, like a bicep, right? And just going to start moving this stuff in place because oh God. All right, if you want to use posable symmetry, you can do that. You just got to make sure that your mesh is symmetrical. And while you're in pose, you can still sculpt symmetrically. And just going to put this into place roughly, just so things aren't weirding me out too much. You can see how lopsided and what's his name? The Evil Dead guy. What's his name? Yeah, it's looking like his chin. So we want to bring that back. And you want to make sure there's a good distance between your lips and your teeth. There's a good amount of distance there. Bruce Campbell, that's his name. Game not available in PlayStation. Yeah, that sucks, dude. I know. Without the Russianness, and just in terms of like a shooting game, it's pretty damn fun. Pretty damn good. Come on. There we go. Yeah, in terms of just a shooting game, it's real fun. But I think we should develop a fake country that we all fight. Maybe we can use what's his name? Dr. Doom. What was his country that he made? Maybe we can fight them. Yeah, this clavicle's just popped out a little bit too much for me. So we're going to go to the skeleton. Let's see what we can do. Okay, I'm going to solo this out. It's just a little bit too popped out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this and don't really have, let's see if we can kind of rotate this in a bit more. You see how popped out it is? Just a little bit too much. Oops. Let's grab this, mask it, invert it, and then rotate it. I'm scaling it, rotating it in a little bit, just so it's not so popped out. And then we can, I think I was just testing it to make sure it's going to work. And it is. So now I'm going to bring the arm with it instead of doing it independently. Just going to move that just a little, rotate it in. Okay. Let's see where this is looking. Maybe a little bit more rotation in. Right there. Yeah, because I don't mind it popping out, but that's just a little bit too much for this specific pose. And I think this is going to look a little bit less contortionist. Yeah. It looks like she was contorting her body to reach out, and that's not really necessary. Okay. Send that down. And turn off transparency, turn off polyframe. And I kind of want to get this little hook along the spine of the scapula right here. This little hook, a little indication of the medial border. And you're going to see this little hook on most people. It's going to be right there. It's kind of where your trapezius is rolling off of your scapula. And so just something right there. And then we're going to have our rhomboids. And it's going to be from the medial border to our 7th vertebrae, which is pretty easy to mark because it's the one right before, and it's going 7, 8, 9, 10. And it's just going down there, right? And that's going to reach the end. So you're going to have this kind of influencing the back. It might not be that puffed out, but there will be a border here. As subtle as it is, subtlety is reality. So we got to put it in there. And we can have the trapezius kind of coming from here. And just smooth it out. Okay, we've got infraspinatus, something like that. It's very hard for me to say. But that's coming from right here, and it's going straight. And so we want this. We don't want to just start swooping down super quick. We want this infraspinatus kind of flattening out the surface of our scapula. And depending on how muscular or what they're doing specifically, that'll be shown more or less. You just got to do your research. Got to do your research. Alrighty, and this head is a little big. Put that in there. Put this rat mule. Making sure all this is kind of to the bone. At least for me, because I'm just OCD like this. Even though we're not going to use this head at all, I still want it wrapped around the skull. Okay. Because we sculpted a head independently. But yeah, hopefully on stream today for our second stream, we'll be doing a Adam West likeness. And so just kind of, and kind of getting that according to the concept art that was provided by the client. And yeah, it'll hopefully be a good time. Get to see how I put together a likeness using anatomy. It'll be pretty. Hopefully, it'll help you out, because I know a lot of people's portraiture is probably an area that they want to improve the most, and I'll definitely be handing out all the anatomy knowledge like I was on this one. So if you haven't joined the stream, if you haven't liked, if you haven't subscribed, what the hell are you doing? Make sure you do it right now. I want to see at least 2 of them. 2 notifications. I want to give it up to Avid PH, Solon 888, and Igminator and Phantom Vortex for subscribing and following. You are the best. You are what the ZBH Dojo is all about. Thank you very much. Okay. Bring that over. Okay, we're going to move that. We're going to kind of even this out. Just a little bit, smooth it out. Just to give a little sexier back to it. And let's go up one more. And let's hit this teres major. Just a bit more. It doesn't have to be Ecker shade out, right? You can just hint at the fact that it's there. You know, this. And this is attaching to your humerus right there. Right? And then your shoulder is going to go over. So boom, shoulder is going over. Right there. Your tricep is going up into your scapula as well. We can probably move this up a little bit. Okay. And we'll get to the arms on another day. But I think this would be good enough as a block in for the torso. So does anybody have any questions before we take a break before our next stream? Anything about the upper torso anatomy or anything like that before I head out? G Diamond, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. ZBH Dojo Legend material. Thank you for following. I appreciate it. All right. Anything? I'm going to give it a few more seconds. And then we're going to call it. I want to thank Jonathan Rios, my student, for doing a good job blocking this out. Thank you for letting me use it for this stream. He's one of my students at the university, doing a great job, and really appreciate all the hard work you're doing. And I think there's been no questions. So we're going to call it for right now. I'm going to go get something to drink, something to eat, let my dog out, all that good stuff, maybe take her for a walk. And then we're going to come back and we're going to work on Batman 66 versus Joker 66. So Adam West versus, was it George Romero? All right. So again, let us pay homage and bow to our masters, Father Frank Frazetta, St. Joseph, St. Paul, St. Ryan, and the Archangel of CG, Raph. Thank you very much. I appreciate y'all watching. I appreciate y'all being here. I hope you're learning a whole lot because I'm bringing all the anatomy knowledge that I can. If you're ever interested, definitely Caesar Romero. Thank you. I always get George and Caesar mixed up. Thank you, Hannibal. We're going to be doing this all the time. I'm going to try to be doing this like twice a week. And if you're interested, I have a 10-week course on how to create collectibles with all this anatomy in lecture form. You can find it at XMD Academy. Other than that, please please subscribe. Please let somebody know, hey, if you don't know your anatomy, you should probably head on over to Spicer's stream because he's going to bring it. He's going to bring it every time. All right. Thank you again for all the follows, all the love, all the likes, all the comments. It greatly helps the stream and its outreach. Definitely make sure you like and subscribe because I'm going to be back later today with male anatomy, all types of male anatomy. Maybe something that's going to be offensive. We're going to be talking about the coccyx. I'm just letting you know. Ian EZ, thank you for the stream. Thank you for being here, Ian. Make sure you follow. Do I see your name here? Do I see your name, Ian? Are you a follower of my stream, Ian? I'm going down the line right now. I'm looking. All right. Ian EZ.